have companies everywhere from BC to the Maritimes as well. What we provide our members is information on what's going on, and you saw that with the magazine. We have a website. We're starting to publish a newsletter, so all of that is provided to our members. We provide our members with networking. This is what basically members tell me is the most important thing for them of CanBio, is the networking, so that they know who to talk to if they're looking at a problem that they have, if they're looking for financing, anything like that. We provide the networking that gives them connections to other people. So that's a very important role that we play. And we, as a result, we help with growth. So we help people grow their companies as well. Just to give you an idea of some of our activities, we have international missions. We've held missions to Denmark, Finland, Netherlands, Singapore, and this is where we take typically around 20 people, companies to visit sites, installations, other companies in those areas, and we hold meetings there so that basically companies in Canada can learn about what's going on in other countries in the bioeconomy. In addition to that, we have conferences. We just had, for example, a conference in Gatineau 2 weeks ago where the focus was creating business in the bioeconomy. At that conference, we had a number, for example, of investment companies come in and talk about how they go about choosing how they invest in companies in the bioeconomy. So that's, again, kind of service that we provide. This, again, is just sort of the events. The one in Gatineau, which was 2 weeks ago. We also have, for example, an event next week, October 29th and 30th in Saskatoon, where the focus of that event is the agricultural bioeconomy. A lot of what you've seen in the past on the bioeconomy is based on using forestry and wood. The focus of our meeting next week in Saskatchewan is what's going on in the prairies with the agricultural resource in terms of the bioeconomy. And as you saw, the magazine, again, I introduced the magazine. One of the things that CanBio does is if we're going to promote the bioeconomy, you have to understand what the bioeconomy is. And one popular phrase that we've used recently when people start talking about the bioeconomy and the coming bioeconomy is we like to say the bioeconomy is already here. And so in order to support that, what we've been doing is we do an annual survey where we look at what companies are involved in the bioeconomy, what they're doing, where they are, how many people they employ. So we look at not only the size of the industry, but what are the socioeconomic benefits from that industry as well. And as an example of some of the data that we have, for example, in our 2011 survey, we identified 242 bioenergy producers across Canada. In our 2012, that expanded to 460 bioenergy producers in Canada. So you can see there's rapid growth in these areas in Canada. And we look at everything from biogas and greenhouses as well to community heating services. We break it down in terms of what type of facilities are there in each province and across the whole country. So we have an idea of community heat systems. For example, this is the data from last year. We surveyed 69 community heat installations, 43 biogas installations, 41 pellet plants, 39 pulp and paper, industrial heat and power, ethanol, biodiesel, and pyrolysis oil. These are all companies that are active in Canada right now, and so we collected data on all of them. Interesting things come up. The colors on this one didn't quite turn out, but there's a bar above the blue that you can't see, but this shows you the growth in community heat systems across Canada over the last 8 years. And you can see what a rapid, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, there's been a rapid growth in the number of community heating systems using biomass. This is mostly using wood. So there's been an enormous growth in Northwest Territories, Quebec, and British Columbia. And what's even more interesting about this is if you consider that most of the growth has been in the last 5 years, and in the last 5 years is when we've had the significant drop in natural gas prices, where shale gas is selling much cheaper than it had been before. So even in spite of that, we see enormous growth in bioenergy facilities across Canada. The survey is continuing. Right now we're in the process of surveying this year in terms of what's going on, and we're expanding the survey to include additional bioeconomy facilities in addition to what was done in the past as well. So Most of that was about bioenergy. I like this picture. I mean, we're sort of in the area where you might see this outside. Well, I use this picture because to me it's very important, because until the mid-19th century, biomass was the primary raw material for most products used by humans. Humans used biomass for food, medicines, energy, clothes, materials, chemicals. Everything came from biomass pretty much in the 19th century. And the bioeconomy is basically about going back to that, except now I call it industrial biotechnologies. And then industrial biotechnologies, and we tend to focus by the new bioeconomy, because new bioeconomy can mean farming, it can mean conventional forestry, et cetera. By the new bioeconomy, we generally talk about industrial biotechnologies. So things like bioenergy, biomaterials, biochemicals, and we've heard all the other speakers today talking about that and how important that is in the bioeconomy. Oops, I had to have a busy slide because everybody says you have to have one. So this is my busy slide. This, if you're talking about the bioeconomy, this is what the bioeconomy is about. So you can see at the very top, which you can't read, I understand these presentations are going to be made available, so at the very top you can't read all those things. That shows you all your different types of biomass. Agricultural materials like straw, corn stover, etc., and the processes that you can use to transform them, and then at the bottom you're going to have all the different chemicals and all the different fuels. And this is some of the processes, this is not all of the processes, this is some of the processes that you can use to transform that biomass into something in the bioeconomy. So you can see it's a very complicated picture. But the important part about the complicated picture is this. This is projections on the global chemical industry growth. We're looking at a global chemistry, or global chemical industry growth, and the number in the last column there is 2050 of more than $1,500 billion. And the thing is, if you look at the last chart, that shows you the top part is chemical supplied from fossil fuels, which they've been mostly in the past. By 2050, you expect that up to 50% of all the chemicals will be supplied from biomaterials, from biomass. So there's enormous potential here for materials and chemicals coming from the bioeconomy. So just to restate that in terms of words rather than a figure, it's a huge opportunity for jobs and future economic growth for Canada. You know, you saw that slide. Just in chemicals alone, we're talking about a global opportunity of at least $750 billion. So, planning for the bioeconomy, you have to plan for this. And I think Ronnie is gone already, is he? Anyway, there's Ronnie this morning. So I got a picture of Ronnie this morning talking here. And you can see he was talking about the strategies that other countries have come up. That's his slide. You can't make out the flags on this picture, but you have the flags of all the different countries, what their strategies are for the bioeconomy. And if you looked at his slide, the very bottom, last line of his slide was a little flag of Canada, and the line was blank. Okay? That's a very important issue. Our key trading partners have bioeconomy strategies. There's some text there. This is taken from the Technology Roadmap for Plant Crop-Based Renewable Resources 2020 US. This is published by the US 5 years ago. Okay? The US government 5 years ago came out with this roadmap for the bioeconomy and where they wanted to go. And you saw the slide from Ronnie this morning. The Canadian government is still blank. So does Canada have a bioeconomy strategy is the question. What we do have is leaders in bioenergy. You know, one of the things that people said, well, maybe we're not good enough. You know, one of the things that people tell me sometimes when they go to Europe to a conference is, boy, the Europeans are really ahead of us in everything. And I tell them, no, they're not. They have some advantages because of fossil fuel prices, et cetera, but they're not world leaders. If I want to know who are world leading companies in bioenergy, and I'm talking about new bioenergy, not building boilers, okay, because anybody can build a boiler. I'm talking about new bioenergy. In the new bioenergy, for example, gasification, Enerchem, Enerchem has just inaugurated a new plant in Edmonton, 100,000 tons of garbage per year to make ethanol. Enerchem is based in Montreal. They're a Canadian company. Started and run by a scientist, by the way. Yes. Nextera, a leading company in gasification. Nextera has the most gasification plants in the world of any company. They've just started up last year a brand new plant. University of British Columbia supplies heat and power from the University of British Columbia. World leading company. Ensign. Ensign's a pyrolysis company based in Renfrew. They are the world leaders in pyrolysis, which is basically extracting chemicals from biomass. They've been in business, believe it or not, for 20 years doing that. And they've been in business because early on they identified one chemical. And the one chemical they got was liquid smoke. Liquid smoke is used as food flavoring. And if you go to restaurants like Harvey's and you have that nice grill flavor on the hamburgers, it's not because of the way you cook it, it's because liquid smoke ferments and makes it taste that good. Just remember that. Anyway, but my point here is Canadian companies are the leading companies in the world in advanced bioenergy. So Canadian companies can be the leaders in the bioeconomy. And that's our message is, you know, Europe isn't doing it better. They have different circumstances, and it's interesting to see how they're doing it. But we're as good as anybody else. And in terms of developing things, you know, I think we're ahead of a lot of people. What we have to do is we have to use our vast resources, and again, I think Chris mentioned this morning, our biomass resources, to position ourselves as the bioinvestment destination. So we have to use the resources and say, you want to develop the bioeconomy? We have the resources. You come here and you invest here and you're going to make money out of it. And some companies are. I mean, BioAmber is building a plant in Sarnia, right, to basically make succinic acid from sugars. And they're from where? France? That's where they're based. So, you know, that's what we have to do. We have to get companies to come here and use our resources for investment. In order to do that, all levels of government must be involved in getting the right policies in place to get this happening. But not just all levels of government. This is very important for me. Biomass is a local resource. I think, Doug, you said don't go more than 80 kilometers. I usually tell people 100, but maybe I'm optimistic. Biomass is a local resource because it's very distributed material. Because it is a local resource, a lot of the benefits are going to be locally. So communities have to be involved in exploiting the local resources because the communities stand to benefit the most. So all the levels of government, especially communities, have to be involved in developing the bioeconomy. And that's where the new CanBio is, because we're looking at this and until, I guess, last year, Chris, it was Canadian Bioenergy Association was the focus. I joined CanBio 6 months ago, and I said the new focus is the Canadian bioeconomy. It's not, we're going to keep the name CanBio because people know, we've been around for 11 years, 12 years, and people know CanBio. But we're not going to be the Canadian Bioenergy Association. We're going to be the Canadian Bioeconomy Association, and we're going to advance we're going to promote the advancement of the bioeconomy across Canada, provincially, nationally, and locally. So we're going to do that by raising the profile. We want to, in order to make sure that we're raising the profile properly, we're going to coordinate, and we've already started doing that. You know, I mentioned that we had our annual meeting in Gatineau 2 weeks ago. The opening session of our annual meeting, we had a panel with the president of FPAC, the Forest Products Association. We had the president of the Canadian Renewable Fuels Association, and who else did we have? Our own chair, and someone else. I'm sorry, my mind is going. Anyway, and the focus there was we want to bring the associations together. Because what happens is if you have one person talking about biogas over here, and one person talking about ethanol over there, and one person talking about trees over here, one person talking about straw over there, there's a lot of people talking. And if we're trying to get government to come up with a strategy, they don't know who to listen to. They hear all these voices, and what we have to do is coordinate that so that we have a message saying, this is what we want you to do to bring the bioeconomy forward. One other thing I should mention, one of the key things of the bioeconomy is we have to incorporate traditional industries. You know, when we talk about bioeconomy, people just think about new and biomass and new. But one of the key ways in which we can promote the bioeconomy is to bring traditional industries into the bioeconomy as well. Whether that's, you know, bringing, for example, oil companies into it, so that, you know, and I know that a few of the studies going on right now are soil remediation. Okay, say you have a place where there's an oil facility that's leaked chemicals into the soil, and you need to clean it up. One way you can do that is to grow certain energy crops which are going to collect those materials out of the soil, and they're going to clean the soil in the process of creating something which is green and going to supply you in something in the bioeconomy. So we need to develop synergies with existing industries. We can't just think of the bioeconomy as something which is going to be new and separate. We have to look at how can we link with the existing industries and work with them in order to promote the bioeconomy. Now there's progress in this method. I mentioned our conference. Another thing that I mentioned is BEN, which is BEN is short for Bioeconomy Network. And BEN is a collection of association and groups in Canada, which was formed, again, about a year ago or something like that. And I'm sorry you can't read that. I can't read that, and I'm this close to it. But BEN members represent 800 companies in Canada. They represent 2 million jobs in Canada and almost $300 billion in annual revenue. And they're companies that are associations that are involved in some way in the bioeconomy. And by working together, we can sort of put the same message out there. I mentioned at the bottom, the other thing, and this was brought up again this morning when we heard that Agriculture Canada talking about an interdepartmental working panel. CanBio has been intimately involved with the people on the interdepartmental working panel to come up with a strategy. There was a meeting, for example, at Carleton University in June. I think, Chris, you were there on behalf of CanBio. And basically, you had ADM level people there talking from different departments talking about the strategy. At our AGM 2 weeks ago in Gatineau, we had a federal panel just like this, and we had somebody from Agriculture Canada, Natural Resources, Industry Canada, and National Research Council, all talking about collaborating and developing a bioeconomy strategy. So the government is starting to see this, the government departments are starting to see this, and how they can work together. But it comes back to the one thing I said. When everybody's talking, no one is heard. So we have to speak as one voice. And that doesn't necessarily mean that only one person can speak. But the message has to be consistent. It has to be the same message. Because we know politicians, they don't remember things for very long, you know, short memories. So we have to get the message in there. The other thing they don't remember is very complicated messages. So we have to make it simple. So we want to have a couple of issues or principles that we can rally people behind, and then use that to push the agenda forward for the bioeconomy. And I think that concludes my talk. Just a little plug, join us. So, you know, we're open to individual members. We're looking for associations and other groups. So, you know, some of the groups involved here, I think you should consider joining CanBio, and together we can deliver a stronger message and get the bioeconomy moving. Thank you.